first episode of Into Uncharted Waters. I'm so excited you're here as we dive deep into one of the most important aspects of our high school journey, friendships. In this first episode, we're going to explore what it truly means to have friends who stick with you throughout the thin and the thick moments, and how to navigate the ups and downs of friendships and what it takes to maintain those connections over time. To make things even more interesting, we're jumping into the TV show Outer Banks and discussing the group dynamics and personal struggles the characters face. From betrayal of trust to navigating loyalty and shifting priorities, we'll analyze how these themes show up and affect our lives. So whether you're in the middle of a friendship crisis or just looking for tips on how to keep the best friendships you make in high school, this episode is packed with real talk and helpful advice. Let's get started. I am here with two very special guests.
I'm Caroline, and I'm a freshman in high school.
And I'm Annie, and I'm also a freshman in high school.
So Annie and Caroline are here to answer some questions that I ask about friendships and navigating high school in general. Let's get started. Okay, first question. What's the best piece of advice you wish someone had given you before entering high school?
I would definitely say it's a really big jump socially.
Definitely.
And I would say that you have to focus on your academics more, and obviously there's still a social life, but it's just more serious in high school.
I agree, because I think especially in high school, there's a lot of room for free time and exploring what you love. So being social is very important too, but also having time for academics and being able to balance a social life is very important to having a fun high school time. What was your biggest challenge in high school so far? What has been your biggest challenge in high school so far? And how did you get through it, or how are you working towards overcoming this obstacle?
My biggest challenge was probably time management in and out of school, because I kind of got caught up in all the fun social things in high school, and at the beginning I kind of had trouble getting my homework done.
Yeah.
I would say definitely finding balance between your social life and academically what you have to do, because I'd say it's just so important, especially through high school.
Definitely, especially because I think more in high school than freedom-wise that we had in middle school. There were so many social events and activities. But then also we were given so much more independence in high school. We had our phones, so we had to learn how to be responsible and manage academics as well. Okay, now we're going to get into some more of the friend-related questions. So how do you think going to an all-girls school impacts making friends with guys?
I think, personally, I have a twin brother, so I kind of know all his friends, and I used to go to a co-ed school, so I, made friends with guys until when I moved here in 6th grade, so I don't have any trouble having guy friends, but I don't know how that would affect someone who had been here since pre-K.
Well, I would definitely say, when you're younger, you're just not around the guys as much, as a little
Definitely.
kid, it wasn't even weird, but, through middle school, you start having mixers, and everybody's just really awkward, but I don't have much to compare it to. I feel like overall, even in middle school, those type of things are awkward. But, it's just spending time with guys.
Okay, so what do you think about the idea that girls and guys can't just be friends? Do you think it's true or just a general stereotype?
I would say it's definitely a stereotype. I feel like guys can be, girls and guys can be friends.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Do you have any tips or maybe recommendations on how to maintain friendships with guys? Or anything that's maybe worked for you?
I would just say I feel like when you're younger, it becomes more of a stereotype, because it seems like everybody has to either person has to like somebody at one point.
Definitely.
But I feel like the older you get, you kind of just realize that sometimes that is the truth, but sometimes it's not.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So the next question it's a bit more of a deeper one, but how have you handled or experienced friendship breakups? Was it hard, and what were you most afraid of?
So one of my biggest challenges with losing friends was when I moved. I moved from California in 6th grade, and it was kind of hard to keep in touch with my friends, but I just made good friends in Dallas, and I still talk to some of my LA friends.
That's good. And I think to add on to that, from my personal experience, I moved from a co-ed school to an all-girls school. And especially because when I moved, it was COVID year, I feel like I lost connection with a lot of friends. And I think when COVID hit, it was tough for me to find ways to still stay connected with friends. But that's the good thing about FaceTime and social media is there's always a way to stay connected with people. But do any of y'all have any tips for anyone going through a friendship breakup right now? Like what to do, how to put yourself out there more?
I would just say it's hard to imagine that you wouldn't be friends with that person, but everything happens for a reason.
Definitely,
And even
that's a
though it
good
might be
quote.
hard right now, like, it'll definitely get better and get easier.
And just because you're in a rough spot doesn't mean you're never going to be friends again. Just sometimes sometimes you just need space from people.
And I think being in like a friendship breakup or even on a break is such a good opportunity for you to get to know other people that you wouldn't normally talk to or hang out with. I think and also just be yourself. I think being yourself is the most important thing because when you're yourself, people are going to like you more than if you try to be somebody else. So just be yourself, be who you are. Don't change yourself for anyone else. How do you decide who to spend your time with, and what qualities do you look for in a friend?
I like to spend time with people that make me feel better about myself because sometimes you get in friendships that don't make you feel good about yourself, and I think you just need to be around people that bring out your best self.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, when looking for a friend, it's not necessarily like looking for a friend, but kind of the people you grow close to are the people that you have like stuff in common with and that make you feel good about yourself.
And I think that when people say, oh, we're going to be best friends forever, I think you have to have a bit of room to grow and you have to open yourself to, getting to know people. And I think I definitely agree with Annie when she said, you're not really like choosing a friend. It's kind of something that happens more naturally that, you start hanging out and then you kind of just grow closer from there. And I think quality wise, at least from my perspective, I look for someone, who makes me happy, who I enjoy laughing with. For me, I like to get to know people who we share a lot of similar interests with.
And I think you can find a friend in mostly everyone. I think we're just going into like the close friend realm, but like a lot of people like tell you when you're a new kid not to be friends with certain people because they don't like
that's
them.
a good point.
But I mean that's another thing that ties into high school with all the new girls and everything. I just think you should find out for yourself who you want to be friends with.
So don't make any first judgments. How do you keep a friendship alive when you both have different schedules, such as being busy with school, sports, or other activities?
So one example I have in mind, in addition to moving from LA to Texas, is like camp friends, because most of my camp friends live in Chicago or New York or somewhere far away. And especially because we live in this day and realm, social media and like FaceTime and Snapchat all really helps because you can still talk to people that live far away and keep in touch.
Yeah, I agree. I think FaceTime is a huge advantage, and especially living in today's modern world, as you said, a lot of the technology is really helpful.
And I do think it helps me talking to people that don't go to my school or live near me because it gives me more of a perspective on the rest of the world and just hearing fresh voices.
I would say if you really care about like somebody's friendship and you really feel connected with them, just making sure you're checking in. Because I say, like, I changed hobbies recently into kind of like a whole new thing for me, and I really bonded with people from my old hobby, so it was really important to me to stay in touch with those people and keep communicating with them. Recently, I moved from like riding horses all the time. I owned a horse over the summer, and I've been doing it for the past like 5 or 6 years, to making high school cheer, which is a really big jump. And so I ended up selling my horse over the summer, and I had really bonded with the people at my barn, and I had really bonded with my horse and like the whole sport. I've been doing it for a really long time, so I just over time really grown with those people, and I love being on cheer and I love just the team and everything. But I would definitely say I felt like at first I had lost a few friends when I like changed sports, but now I'm realizing that if I just like stay in touch with them and stay communicating, and they're reaching out and I'm reaching out, we can still have a really great friendship and keep each other updated in life.
I think that's a great story and a great learning point because, I think in a lot of friendships, you're not going to have the same interest on every single thing, but you can still, stay connected with people and be friends even through those different activities. So a lot of my other friends also, many do soccer, some do swimming, and I think keeping up with them in the way is like, oh, how was your soccer game? How'd the swim meet go? It's a way to stay connected with people while discussing hobbies that everyone enjoys, because honestly everyone likes talking about themselves.
Yeah.
And sharing your accomplishments with your friends is so important, because friends are there to lift you up and boost you and support you through whatever you decide to do. So I think that's a really great point that you made, Annie. And same with different schedules. I think a good thing about not having the same schedule as a friend is that's another time to get to know other people. So you're in math class and you have no friends, go ahead and branch out, meet somebody new, make some new friends.
Yeah, I was really nervous about my Latin class this year because more than half of my class is sophomores, and I do have 3 freshmen that I was in class with last year and I'm friends with, but I was kind of nervous because I sit at a table with 2 sophomores. But I don't know, it's nice knowing people from other grades, and I really just had to get to know them, and I didn't really have any reason to be nervous.
And I think that's another great point that you made, is making friends with people in different grades or who are, not the same age as you. Because you can learn a lot from someone who's younger or older. So that's a good point. And also, I think kind of one of my experiences with being, nervous about making friends is when I was new and I came to my new school for the very first time, and I walked in and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so worried about like who I'm gonna sit at lunch with, or like who's gonna like take me to class, or who am I gonna sit with in class. But I had, thankfully, a very, very good experience coming into the school, and everyone was so welcoming and friendly. I remember on the first day, there was a girl. She came to the door. We're so happy to have you here. She walked me to all my classes, even if that meant she was late to her classes. But so I think that's the feeling of welcoming somebody or just being inviting is really, really important. And so that's something I think we all can strive to do, is to be a bit more friendly, say hi to someone you wouldn't normally say hi to. What do you do when you get into an argument with a friend? How do you work towards resolving conflict?
I would definitely say to like take the time to like read the situation and see what's happening. My mom always told me when I was younger, to take the time, get off your, if it's happening on your like iPad or something, take the time, get away from your iPad, go outside, do something else, and then come back and think about it. Just because I think that's important.
Yeah, and also, if it's a friendship I care about and it's a person I care about, I always say sorry and I always talk it out with that person, because I don't think it's healthy if you just move on or just don't talk to them. I think communication is a key element into all friendships.
That's another thing about maintaining trust. I think trust is so built on communication. It's a basic building block to a lot of friendships. It's just being open with people you care about and being honest even when you're in the wrong. I think saying sorry, even for me, is probably one of the hardest things to do as a human, is acknowledging that you're wrong sometimes. So if you're in the wrong, I would say just say sorry. Maybe in that way you can maybe work towards working your situation out or your conflict out. Because I'll share a story. Back in 6th grade, I was very, very, very close with this girl, and I have nothing against her now. I still think she's incredible. We were great friends. One day we got into an argument, and what I learned from that is we kind of let that kind of ruin our friendship, which is really unfortunate. But we both gave it some time. I decided to reach out, text her, letting her know that like, hey, like what happened? I really valued our friendship, and I still do value it. And I miss talking to you, and I miss hanging out with you. And we talked a bit about over text, and then we agreed to meet at street. Talked about what went wrong, what we both didn't like, or what we both found uncomfortable in the friendship, and then we worked towards a solution. And we resolved everything. And obviously, not every friendship you're gonna resolve. And I mean, toxic friends exist, and sometimes you have to acknowledge toxic friends and get away from them. And I think a lot about thing about losing friends is especially losing a friend you love, is know, like Caroline said, it'll take time for everything to go back to normal, and nothing will ever go back to normal. You'll just have to get used to the new normal. And I think, like Annie said, with everything happens for a reason, just trust what's happening.
Yeah, you really have to trust, because I think it's really important. Sometimes the smallest arguments, just like get the best of your relationship, and then they just build up upon time. And I have a relationship that happened, and we were really close, and now we're not close anymore. And I think it's affected both of us. We were really, really close, and we grew apart, and even sometimes when we have conversations now, it just feels like a little awkward, and that's not something you want. Like, that's really not something you want. Like, there are some relationships that you really have to distance yourself, because, like you said, there are toxic relationships, but this was one that just was stupid arguments that got the best of us, and I look back on it, and.
And I think you have to, also something about adding on to that, what Annie said was, you have to remember the good times. If there's friendships, you're like, okay, we're never going to be able to go back to the original friendship state that we were in. You have to remember, like, oh, but we did do this, and that was fun, and, I really enjoyed that. You have to focus on the positive things of life rather than focusing on the negative aspect of everything. Because if you constantly view the negative aspects, you're going to be like, oh, well, I wish this happened, and you're going to be unhappy. So focus on the positive. Always look on the bright side of things, because you never know. You may meet a new person who was similar to that, and you may be like, okay, so everything did work out for the better. Like, I have new friends now. So be patient with yourself, and trust other people.
You have to take the time to understand both sides, like both sides of the argument, because otherwise, you're trying to cut in when somebody else is trying to apologize. And I just remember when I was younger, I'd be like, but I didn't do that. I don't remember doing that. Like, that's not my fault. And really take the time to see both sides.
And I think most of the time there isn't a right person and a wrong person, which is why I think you do need to communicate. And if you really think you did nothing wrong, maybe the other person misunderstood something or heard something. And I think whenever you're in doubt, you just have to talk to the person you're having issues with.
So again, back to why communication is so important, because you have to be able to express your feelings. And I think perspective is a huge thing in friendships. You have to be mature enough to look at both sides, to acknowledge what the other person did wrong, but also yourself. You also have to figure out, okay, this is what I did wrong. And I think together as friends, you can work towards finding how to fix it and resolve that issue. How do you feel about talking behind someone's back, and how do you handle situations where people gossip about you or your friends?
So I've definitely talked behind people's back, and I know people have talked behind my back, and that's something I admit to, and I don't think it was right. And I think if you can help it, you shouldn't talk behind someone's back, because it always gets back to you. People who say they're not going to tell, they always tell. It doesn't matter if they're your best friend or you've talked to them twice. It always gets back to the person you're talking about. And you never know someone's whole story. So I just wouldn't talk about someone. But the reasons I have talked about someone, I understand, because sometimes it feels like you need advice, or you just need to tell someone because it just feels like something's wrong.
Like venting, venting to a friend.
I just feel like if you're saying something bad and there's not really a purpose, I wouldn't talk behind someone's back.
But it's a really hard thing to do. Like, I've caught, it happens all the time. Like, if you're just
and
listening
so
in the
often
hallways, like, it
too.
happens all of the time. And it does get back to you, and it gets back to the person, and it doesn't end well most of the time, but it happens, and it sucks, and it happens.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the more unfortunate things, because I think everyone can admit to talking bad about somebody. I think that's just a part of life, because I think people find gossip interesting, or gossiping, that gives them something to talk about, especially talk about what other people are doing or people up to.
It's a distraction.
I think it's a distraction. I think the big thing that I would say, advice would be, be careful what you say, and watch who you're telling this, with, and what you're talking about, because some topics could be really sensitive to certain people, and you don't ever want to offend anyone. And just try and be positive. Again, look at everything with a very open eye. Try and always go into everything, not expecting anything, and again, being positive. And I think that should really help with the gossip. Just be positive. All right, next question. How do you handle it when a friend becomes closer to someone else and you feel like you're being left behind?
I think that's a really hard situation, and I've been in that situation, and it really hurts because it feels like they're replacing you. But I think that's why it's important to have a bunch of friends, because it's not necessarily like someone's a backup friend, but I think you just need friends in different places, because sometimes you go through rough patches with certain friends, and that doesn't mean you're not going to be that close ever again or forever. But I just think you need to have other people in your life, and you have to not let it affect you because it hurts, but usually it happens to most friendships.
And I would say there are some scenarios where it's not that you necessarily like don't need a friend's advice, but like there are other people where like there are certain scenarios where I'm like, oh, I need to talk to this friend because, you know, like they will give the best advice about stuff like this. And it's just important to have friends all around because stuff like this does happen all the time. And I've been in scenarios like that, and it's really, really hard because you feel like you're just left there and they don't want you as a friend anymore. They don't need you as a friend anymore. But that's just not true.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of your opinions, and I think that, you know, don't overthink everything, because also in a lot of the times back to like when you're wondering like, oh, am I in the wrong? Did I do something? Like, why does it feel like everyone around me who I'm close to is leaving me? When, you know, maybe that's not the case. I think be patient with yourself. Know that it'll get better. Trust everything that's happening. Everything happens for a reason. But also I think back to when you're making friends, just open yourself in order to have room for other friends. You know, have friends from different friend groups. And, you know, you don't have to, like, jump around, but, again, be friendly with everyone. You should be able to one day, you know, don't have one friend. And that one friend, you know, leaves you or goes somewhere else and you have nowhere to go. So be open to making many friends who are different people, who have different interests than you. Because I think that, in the long term, will really help you when it comes to having different friends from different friend groups. And also, I think the word left behind, like the feeling like you're left behind, that's a feeling probably everybody has felt before. So you're not alone when you feel like left behind. And I think there's always going to be someone who you can relate to and who you can talk to. And if you're feeling upset about something friendship-wise, if you're feeling left behind, I think talking to that friend and expressing those feelings is so important, because, again, communication is key, and expressing when you're feeling angry or alone or forgotten. Talk to your friend and see what you can do to work towards that.
I would say there's always somebody that will listen, and there's someone that will always understand how you're feeling, and sometimes it just helps to sit down and like talk through your ideas. Whether it's with that person, talk through your feelings. Whether it's with that person or with somebody else who understands how you're feeling, you just have to talk through it.
Yeah. Okay, now we're gonna get into the fun part of the episode. We're going to get into the deep dive TV show, and today's TV show is Outer Banks. Yay! We're going to start with the blind ranking of characters. So, unfortunately, Caroline had to leave for sports, but we still have Annie here, so we will do this fun part with her. Okay, let's get started. Starting off with John B's dad. Where should we put him? 1 to 10.
I don't know. Is this on, like, attractiveness? Because...
Character... I'd say character-wise.
I feel like he's not really a great person.
Definitely. He wasn't a good dad to John B.
I feel like I have to put him pretty low. Okay. I would say he's probably like an 8.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8 or 9. Okay, we'll go 8 since that's what we both agreed on.
Because I'd say there's definitely like worse people.
Rafe.
Oh god. See, he's not a good person, but he's just such an important character.
He is, and I think his, again, what Annie said about him not being a good character, I think that acting was spot on, because he made us all hate him.
I know. Okay, I'm gonna have to give him, like,
I'm gonna go 3.
yeah.
Okay, next. Is
Ward
that
Cameron.
Ward Cameron.
I did not like him at all. He's gonna have to go 9 for me.
But also, they were all so greedy, focused on finding treasure and money and gold. They forgot about what really mattered, and that's friends and family. So, wait, where are we putting him?
He's
9.
9.
Okay, perfect.
Is that John B? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna have to give him, like, either, like, a 2 or a 4.
That's, yeah.
Because he's a really good person, I feel like.
And he's essential to the whole episode. I mean,
Yeah.
he is probably, I would say,
I feel like
the
he's a
main
2.
character. I would say 2.
A 1 or a 2, actually.
Yeah. And Topper, I feel like Topper did not add
He's at the
anything.
bottom.
He, again, back to friendships. He
Creates
also
more
didn't make an
drama.
effort. I think he was a big drama starter. And people like that are toxic people, so don't engage with those kind of people.
Oh, what is her name?
Rose.
Oh,
That's
Rose.
Rose.
I would say she's pretty at the bottom, right? She, like, wasn't a great character at all.
I would say 7 because she didn't really have much importance. Again, I felt like she wasn't a very good mother to Sarah, Rafe, and Wheezy. She didn't really do her job. Okay, Kiara. Oh,
She's such a good person.
Oh,
I
she
want to put her at 1,
is.
but I feel like there's, like, somebody waiting.
Yeah.
I feel like we put her
I
at
agree.
4.
I say we give her 4. I think she was a good friend, and I think she definitely, she put aside her family and her status in the Outer Banks world to focus on her friends. So I think she's a good character.
JJ. He gets there. Like, he gets there as a good person. But I don't think he's number 1. I'd say he's, like, 5.
I think especially from the new season, and after watching, if you've seen the new season, what he
gosh.
did, it was unfortunate. That definitely lowered my, like, I think JJ's got to go at 5.
Yeah. Pope.
Oh, Pope.
He's such a good person. But I feel like sometimes he gets a little overwhelmed by his friend group.
Definitely.
I'm going to put him at 6. I think I'd give
Oh,
him a
that's
6.
tough. I really liked Pope. I thought
I know.
he was such a good character. He sacrificed his future for his friends, and I think we'll explore that later. But okay, I guess we'll put him at a 6. I'm scared. Oh, Sarah.
That's
Okay,
who I
she's an
meant.
easy one.
Yeah.
She was my favorite character.
She's my favorite character. I mean, sometimes, she's put in positions. I would say, where
Definitely.
it's, like, hard to be the better person, but her character always comes through.
And she always tried. She gave it her all. She was always trying to be a good friend. And even her and Key in the beginning, weren't the best of friends, but they talked and worked through their problems out, and they became close.
I think our ranking was pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good ranking.
I would say I wish Pope was a little closer to the top. But yeah.
Yes. Okay, now we're gonna get into the analyzing the Outer Banks characters and their issues with group dynamics and even their personal struggles, and kind of the problem is the different priorities they had, and also their, again, personal issues, the family struggles that they were facing.
Okay, I feel like we should talk about Kiara first.
Okay,
The fact that she really struggles as a, because she's a kook, but she's also a pogue,
yes.
Like, it's hard for her to find balance at first,
And
betraying her parents, and then finally building up their trust again.
because throughout the entire, I think, 4 seasons now, she really struggled and had to go back and forth between, okay, do I choose my friends or do I choose my family? Do I stay loyal to my family and who I am, or do I break barriers and be my own person, be who I want to be? And I think that's something we can talk about even in real life is when you're in situations where you feel you have to either, I have to be loyal to my family, like, family, my family really matters. Like, I think sometimes you're caught between the decision to sacrifice what you most want or what you most wanted, who you most wanted to be because of your family and their different beliefs and opinions. But I think, again, being your own person and your own self is the most important.
And I would say by the end, like, she really does, like, her parents end up helping them out. Like, she really does gain their trust again, but it definitely just takes time, and you see it like really affect her throughout the episodes.
And I think it is. I think even going against your family because of something they didn't agree with is so tough, because your family really is everything. I think, past friends, past all that, it's your family is who's always going to be with you. They are going to support you when you're right, when you're wrong. You can learn from them. And I think family is so important. It's vital. And, friends are there too. Friends are great, but, family sticks with you from the beginning. And I think when you don't have that support system, when you don't have that family, and the thing about JJ too is JJ really lacked parents. He didn't have anyone to rely on besides the rest of the crew.
Yeah, I would say they definitely have the really hard, like, I don't know, because a lot of them just don't, like, Pope has the parental figures that really push him to do better and,
right,
be a good person and focus on his academics and focus on, doing great things. But I would say he constantly is breaking down his trust with his parents and rebuilding it.
Right.
Which can be really, really hard. But it does work out for him.
Because I think, back to what we're talking about, trust and communication in friendships, I think, especially in this show, communication with their parents, and, especially because they were just kids. They're literally high school kids. So a lot of the things that they did and that they faced, communication and trust with their parents was a huge issue. And I think especially the trust thing is, I think almost every single character broke trust.
Yeah.
But also, had to work towards regaining trust with their parents.
It was kind of like, as long as they had each other, and
right,
they had each other's trust, it wasn't, hard. Like, they could get through anything, and they could deal with their parents. And when their
definitely
relationships really started getting challenging in their actual friend group, that's when you kind of notice everything fall apart. And then the involvement with the kooks and, that whole side of things.
And I think as when we're talking about as the group faced challenges such as searching for treasure or enemies, family problems and different priorities created friction. So again, back to the fact that, Kiara was a kook, but, she truly wanted to be a Poe, causing inner conflict. And also I feel like she was stuck feeling torn between her roots and her family's expectations of her versus her friendship with the Poes and, staying true to who she was. I think situations like that, like we said, are very tough situations to be in. But just be yourself. I think that's one important thing. Go with what your heart says.
Yeah.
Back to what I was talking about, Sarah and Kiara's issues and how they kind of mutually agree to respect each other. And Sarah, not even, I would say she basically changed her identity from a kook to a pogue.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how far she was willing to go for one of her friends.
It's just like how the people she respected, those are the people she wanted to be around. She didn't want to be around the kooks. She didn't want to be around, the island with all the money. She really found what mattered through the Pogues in that friend group and really wanted to build on that and became a whole new person. Yeah,
I think what you said about the island is that the rich side of the island, as they call it. You watch the show, you see the difference in the houses between the kooks and the Pogues. She really looked past the money and even like the status and decided to forget all the superficial things and focus on what mattered. And that's the people she met. It's the friends you make. And I think relating that back to like a real life thing, I think that's a huge lesson that we can learn is, sometimes, fancy cars, clothes, houses, jewelry, they're not worth it. It's not worth it at the cost of a friendship, or it's not worth a friend. It's not worth family, sacrificing family or forgetting about it. And I think the big question that we can discuss is, how far are you willing to go for one of your friends?
Yeah. And she was willing to completely, lose her relationship with her brother, lose Rafe. And eventually they do kind of build up a relationship. There's a big season, and there's a big moment in the new season that just came out where they're hugging, and it's a really big moment for them, because it's kind of she dropped the life that she had with the kooks to become a Pogue, and he didn't respect that. He didn't
No,
respect
not at all.
dropping what she found the more relationship, like the bigger, more important relationship, wasn't her family at the time. It was really like the people, and like so being able to kind of bring that all back once she found herself again was really a big point, you know.
And I think back to what you said about, you know, like that final season when they, you know, hugged and, you know, they realized, I think that's when, like, they kind of hit that moment of realization that, oh, we are all we have left. And honestly, I think even, I mean, as much as the two of us didn't like Ward, he showed a lot of character development when, you know, they were looking for the City of Gold, and he ultimately ended up sacrificing himself, because that's when, you know, it clicked, and he was like, okay, you know, I have to be that dad figure that I wasn't for Sarah.
And I know, you know, there's at one point in the new season where Rafe really gets on Sarah because he didn't fully understand that their dad had died to save Sarah, you know? Like, Sarah died for Sarah, you know? He really believed, he didn't understand both sides of the story, which, like we talked about earlier, it's so important to understand both sides of the story, understand where people are coming from, and really
before judging or making assumptions.
You know, because that really, if he would have realized that earlier, I'm not saying it would have fixed the relationship sooner.
Rafe went through so much emotional trauma and pain, as well as Sarah, and I think they could have really helped each other if they had done something better. I think you phrased that perfectly. The two of them could have learned a lot from each other, been there for each other, if they had communicated and trusted each other. I think that's the big thing about family and friends, is you just trust everyone, give them that beginning trust. You know, later on, if they do something to lose that trust, then definitely be more careful. But I think everyone deserves some sort of understanding for each other.
Definitely.
And I think for me personally, how far, like, I'm willing to go for a friend is, you know, I'm willing to always stand up for friends. I mean, if they're in the right, you know, sometimes, again, we all make mistakes, and I think it's your job almost as a friend is when your other friend, like, you know, like when your friend makes a mistake, because no one's perfect, you know, everyone makes mistakes, and when someone makes a mistake, point that out, acknowledge it. You don't have to be like, oh my goodness, you made a mistake, but, you know, hey, like, I just thought, like, this was, what you said was wrong, or what you did was wrong, and, you know, here's how I'd fix it if it hurts somebody. But
yeah, definitely just, you know, how far you're willing to go for a friend is how much you trust them, how much you really care about them, how much effort you're willing to put into a relationship that it will not be perfect all the time, you know? Just stuff like that really makes you think, like, if you do really value this relationship, how much is it going to take from you, and how much are you willing to do?
yes, for sure. And I think this is a perfect, you know, this Outer Banks is a great show filled with all of these things we talked about. You know, it's a good adventure, but you also get the more emotional aspect. Spoiler, but if you haven't seen season 4, when JJ dies, and, you know, I think that's when we learned, I think, like Annie said earlier, is, you know, when the Pogues learn, you know, all they really had in life was each other, because a lot of them didn't have family. John B didn't have parents who cared for him, neither did JJ have good parents. I think he was really the only one with, and Pope had good parents too. But I think generally relying on your friends is a great source. Your friends are always going to be there for you, same with your family. So just rely on the people around you who you trust and who are there to support you. I think that's one of the most important things that we can take away from Outer Banks. Okay, I think that is the end of our very first episode. Thank you to Annie so much for filming with us, and to Caroline. We had a blast discussing friendships and Outer Banks and everything else in between with you, and we can't wait to film episode 2. We'll see you next time. Thank you.